بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد. Imam al-Nawawi in his Arba'in, his 40 hadith compilation, the number 6 hadith he mentions is the following. عن النعمان بن بشير رضي الله عنهما قال سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول. Nu'man ibn Bashir radiallahu anhuma is the narrator, and he says, I heard the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying, إِنَّ الْحَلَالَ بَيِّنٌ وَإِنَّ الْحَرَامَ بَيِّنٌ. That verily all halal things, al-halal referring to all halal things here. All halal things are crystal clear, they're clear, there's no ambiguity in them. And the haram things are also clear. Okay? وَبَيْنَهُمَا أُمُورٌ مُشْتَبِهَاتٌ. And between these two black and white, you could say, the halal and the haram is a grey area. Is an area where it's not so clear. Is this thing halal? Is this thing haram? It's not so clear. And the ulama mentioned, there can be many reasons for this not being clear. We'll do the translation of the hadith first, then inshallah we will explain. So, وَبَيْنَهُمَا أُمُورٌ مُشْتَبِهَاتٌ. And between these two, black and white, halal and haram, there are grey areas which are not so clear. لا يعلمهن كثير من الناس. Many people are not aware of these issues. Which category do they fall into? Does this grey area, does it fall into halal, or is it actually in the haram category? فَمَنِ اتَّقَى الشُّبُهَاتِ اسْتَبْرَأَ لِدِينِهِ وَعِرْضِهِ. That whoever has stayed, has basically kept away, kept free from these shubuhat, from these doubtful areas, these grey areas, then he has kept himself free and safe with regards to his honor and with regards to his deen. Two things, with regards to his reputation that he has, the credibility he has, okay, and with regards to his deen as well, he's played it safe. وَمَنْ وَقَعَ فِي الشُّبُهَاتِ وَقَعَ فِي الْحَرَامِ. And whoever falls into these grey areas, then definitely he will fall into haram eventually. The Prophet ﷺ goes on to give an example later on, and he says, كَالرَّاعِي يَرْعَى حَوْلَ الْحِمَى يُوشِكُ أَن يَرْتَعَ فِيهِ. That it's like, the similarity of this example is like the example of a shepherd. A shepherd, what's his job? Is to shepherd the sheep and the flock, the livestock and the animals. So what does he do? He takes his animals to a certain place so that they may graze and they may eat. So the example of this person who falls in haram is like that shepherd who goes to the boundary, who goes to the borders of his land, where his land his land ends, you could say, and the other land, other person's land, his neighbor's land starts. Okay? It's only a matter of time before his animals, his livestock start grazing in the other person's land. Okay? So they actually start exiting the boundary. أَلَا وَإِنَّ لِكُلِّ مَلِكٍ حِمَةٍ. The Prophet ﷺ says that verily for every king, whether that be Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Malikul Muluk, okay, that the king of the kings, or whether it be a king of mankind, okay, every king has his domain. Every king has his kingdom, has his area where his rules apply, where it's whatever he says goes. Okay, everyone has that sanctuary, that place where he sets the law. أَلَا وَإِنَّ حِمَ اللَّهِ مَحَارِمُهُ. And verily the hima, the sanctuary of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is those things which are sacred. Maharim, okay, maharim can refer to those things that are haram, meaning these are the no-go areas. If you cross this line, then that's it. Then you are accountable. Okay, then you can be punished. Or it can also refer to those sacred things. Why do we call al-Masjid al-Haram haram? Because think about it. The only meaning we know of haram is something that is prohibited. We can't do it. Al-Masjid al-Haram is the same word in Arabic, al-Haram. But here, it means something that, normal things that a person can do outside the haram, he cannot do because of the sanctity of this place. Because of the sacredness of this place, it's as if something which is normally halal becomes haram for him. So look at our fasting, for example. Something that is normally halal, like eating and drinking, becomes haram for us. For example, when a person enters ihram also comes from the word harama, okay? Ihram, okay? For anybody who has gone or going to Hajj or Umrah, before doing and performing the Umrah or Hajj, you have to enter the state of Ihram. You are basically saying, now I am going into a sacred state where things that were previously halal for me are now haram. Okay? ألا وإن في الجسد مضغة إذا صلحت أو صلحت صلح الجسد كله. That verily in the body is a piece of flesh, referring to the Prophet soon mentioned that when this piece of flesh is rectified, is corrected, then the whole body is corrected. وإذا فسدت, and when this piece of flesh becomes corrupted, then the whole body, the entirety of the body becomes corrupted. ألا وهي القلب. Referring to this piece of flesh, the Prophet ﷺ says, this flesh which I am referring to is none other than the heart. This is not referring to now when we're not, it's not limiting it to the actual physical heart. When we say qalb, okay, when the word qalb is used, heart is used in the Quran or Hadith, it's not always referring to the organ inside our body, okay? Even though there is a connection between the other heart and this heart, but it does not mean that it's only restricted to the piece of flesh. So, beginning with the Hadith. إِنَّ الْحَلَالَ بَيِّنٌ وَإِنَّ الْحَرَامَ بَيِّنٌ. This Hadith is mentioned in Bukhari and Muslim. So it's very, very authentic Hadith. So the Prophet ﷺ says that إِنَّ الْحَلَالَ بَيِّنٌ وَإِنَّ الْحَرَامَ بَيِّنٌ. So there are certain things which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has uncategorically, meaning in simple terms, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned these things as crystal clear. The Prophet ﷺ or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned these things to be clearly halal and clearly haram. For example, those things that are mentioned like eating dead meat, okay, eating the meat of an animal which has not been slaughtered but died of other causes, haram. Lahmul khinzir is also mentioned in the Quran, the meat of a pig. Or for example, blood. These things have been mentioned explicitly, okay, without alluding to them, without doing ishara to them. These things have been mentioned sarahatan, explicitly, openly. These things nobody can deny that they're haram, okay? Then on the other hand, like there is a principle also according to Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, that al-aslu fil ashya' al-ibaha, that the default state of things is that the thing is going to be permissible. If there's a default, like for example, whenever you buy a new phone or you start up a new computer, you will have the computer on its default settings, okay? The settings that's already found upon. When you open it up, start it up. Similarly, everything that we see in the world, okay, it has a default state. The default state is that everything is halal until proven otherwise. So al-aslu fil ashya' al-ibaha. So these things are crystal clear as well. If the Sharia has not told us otherwise, these things will be halal. A similar concept is found in English legal law as well. Innocent until proven guilty. A person, you cannot say a person guilty unless you have proof that that person has actually committed the crime. So if we don't have any proof, we can't say that person's guilty. So similar concept in the deen, if something we don't really know about it, okay, the first thing our mind is going to go to is halal. Now if the Quran, there's a verse in it, or there's a hadith regarding this, mentioning that it's haram, then we can say that this thing is haram. So these two things, if they've been mentioned explicitly, these two are clear. Now between them, there is a third category, which is the grey area. Now, why is this grey area there? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could have just made it easy for us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could have just left it as two categories, and that's it, no grey area, black and white, simple. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned these things. This could be many potential reasons. But one of the reasons, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in Surah Al-Mulk, لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا, to test you, to examine you, that which of you has the best actions. Which of you, for the sake of Allah, leaves even the grey areas. Like it comes in another Sahih Hadith, دَعْ مَا يُرِيبُكَ, that leave that thing which causes you some sort of uncertainty in your heart, causes some sort of doubt in your heart for that thing that does not have any doubt in it. There was a time, maybe 30, 40 years ago, maybe even less than that, that for the people for the Muslims living in the UK, eating in a restaurant which had halal meat in it was very difficult. Okay, to find a restaurant which had halal meat in it was very difficult once upon a time. Okay, Whereas nowadays, we have so many options, we're spoiled for options, we're spoiled for choice. There's so many options. Now if a person has so many halal options in front of him, but he still insists that he wants to go for something doubtful, then this is what this hadith is referring to. This is what this hadith is referring to. That leave that thing which has no doubt in it, or which has less doubt in it. Okay? Sorry, leave that thing which has significant doubt in it for the thing that has no doubt in it. So this middle category of the grey area, the things that are not certain, there could be many reasons for them. One reason could be that the ulama who have delved into this hadith or this verse, the ulama for some reason, okay, they could not come to a similar conclusion. Why? Because the wording in one narration of the same hadith and in the other narration of the same hadith is different. Based upon different wording, there's a different outcome. Like they say, whatever you put in, you will get out. Then sometimes the ulama would differ based upon their principles. If one would say that whenever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says an amr, a command in the Quran, for example, you guys in Hifz class, you will hear many times in the Quran, aqimu as-salah wa atu az-zakah, okay? Establish salah and give zakat, okay? These are commands Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving us. Now the ulama, some of them would say when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving a command, every time it's going to be for something that's farad or wajib, okay? Farad. Al-amru lil-wujub, like they say. Some ulama will say no, sometimes a command is given to make something permissible, okay? For example, the Prophet ﷺ, initially he used to stop people going and visiting the graves. That he used to say, like, I used to prohibit you from visiting the graves, but rather now go and visit the graves. Does this mean now when the Prophet ﷺ is saying go and visit the graves, that it's become farad upon us to visit the graves, like farad to pray salah? No. The ulama, they will agree and they will say that this command is not the same command as aqimus salah, establish salah. Okay? This command is in the sense that, for example, if you've got madrasa time and it's till 7:45 or 7:30 and your ustad says to you at the end of madrasa time, go now. Does that mean you can go or you have to go at this time? Most of the time it will be that now you can go. Now it's home time, you can go. So similarly, because of these different types of commands and different understandings, the ulama would have different understandings and different outcomes with regards to their opinions. So this is what causes, these are the few reasons of these grey areas. And if we think about it, sometimes these grey areas can be a source of mercy and flexibility upon the common Muslim. Sometimes these grey areas, because sometimes people, especially the people who begin to practice and they're learning about the deen, sometimes new Muslims, they start thinking that I've heard that deen is easy, but how come that one person is saying one thing and another person is saying another thing? Okay, as long as it's in within certain boundaries, then ikhtilaf and difference of opinion is acceptable in the deen, and it's something which is good. It's something which the ulama of the past, even these people, even the imams of these madhabs, these schools of thought, they did not used to think badly of each other. Rather, Imam Shafi'i is quoted to have said that whatever I say, I believe that to be correct, but there's a possibility of me being incorrect. And whatever my opponent says, the other person on the other side, that I believe that to be incorrect. Otherwise, I'd have to follow it. Okay? But there's a possibility also that he's correct. Because they understood that no matter how knowledgeable a person may be, if he's not a Nabi, then there's a possibility of some sort of mistake coming from him. But now, does this mistake mean that he's going to be sinful? Na'udhu billah? No. Like the commentator of this hadith, Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali, he mentions that this person, when he's trying his best and he has the capability, he has the understanding of the deen, and then he tries to come to the conclusion which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants. He tries his best to find what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from this. Is it halal or is it haram? And he picks one, that person will be rewarded. And if he makes a mistake in that, which is also possible, then that person's mistake is forgiven, because he tried as much as possible. Look, in the world, we live in a world of results. Everybody, they don't want to know your effort. Okay, there can be a student who works hard all year and he gets maybe 40 out of 50 in his exam. There can be a student who's naturally bright. Okay, he doesn't put in effort all year, but one night before exam, he's memorized everything, he has a good memory, and he gets 50 out of 50. Okay, is this equal? If we think about it, all of us will say no, they're not equal because one person's putting more effort in. However, unfortunately, the other person got better results. Now, in the world, we are judged according to our results. Understand this, that the akhirah and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not bound by the rules and laws of this world. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like He says, لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا, He tests us according to our efforts. If our actions are correct and our intentions are correct, then we can expect reward, and this is a good thing, expecting reward. You know, there's a word in Urdu, matlabi, okay? Matlabi. To be matlabi is basically when you only talk to somebody, you only hang around somebody when you want something from them, okay? Otherwise, you don't want to know that person, okay? This is something which is not a very good characteristic. It's not a good habit to be matlabi. And people, they'll say, oh, you only come around me when you want something from me. Your parents will even say it if you keep nagging them. They'll say, oh, you only talk to me when you want something from me. Now, with regards to people, even the closest of people, like your parents, will become tired of you one day. They will say, you know what? You carry on asking me, until how long are you going to carry on asking me? Go and work for yourself, get a job, okay? Money doesn't grow on trees, okay? This is the world, even the closest of people. Yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that, وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ, okay? مَنْ لَمْ يَسْأَلِ اللَّهِ يَغْضَبْ عَلَيْهِ, or كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام. That whoever does not ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala becomes angry with that person. Look, the tables are turned. So we should not think of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as if He will deal with us according to the rules that we know in this world. Moving on, لا يعلمهن كثير من الناس. The Prophet ﷺ says that this grey area, most people don't know which category does this issue fall into. Is it halal or is it haram? Because most people don't have that knowledge. فَمَنِ اتَّقَى الشُّبْهَاتِ. So for the common Muslim, if he has taqwa and he stays away from these doubtful areas, he will be rewarded. إِسْتَبْرَأَ لِدِينِهِ. He will be bari, he will be free with regards to his deen and his honor. Meaning, he's safe, he's played it safe. وَمَنْ وَقَعَ فِي الشُّبُهَاتِ. And whoever has fallen into these doubtful things, okay, وَقَعَ فِي الْحَرَامِ. And then he has fallen into haram, the wording of the hadith. What does this mean? Eventually there will come a time when he will fall into this. For example, a trend nowadays, okay, this trend unfortunately which even the youth are involved in, of vaping, okay. They say, oh, whoever's doing it, he will justify everything. He will say, oh, but it says here that it's not harmful and this and that. But eventually there will come a time when that will lead to another thing, and that will lead to another thing. Eventually he will fall into haram, even if the first stepping stone was not haram. كَالرَّاعِي يَرْعَى حَوْلَ الْحِمَارِ. Like a shepherd, like mentioned before, like a shepherd who has his flock of sheep, he's shepherding them. Yet if he goes to the boundary, the very border of his land, it's only a matter of time before his sheep eventually go into the other person's land. So these boundaries, these laws and all that, like they say, many people, when you tell them that, brother, this isn't right, you shouldn't be doing this, they'll say, at least it's not haram, at least it's not haram. This hadith is answering that sort of mentality, at least it's not haram. Okay, that if you are sat on a fence, eventually you will fall over onto the other side. These fences Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has kept, these are not there. For example, if a person, and I'll finish quickly inshallah, that if a person was to build his house and then he builds his fence around the edges of the house, do most people sit on the fences or do they sit in the middle of their house, the middle area, within the walls of their house? Within the walls of the house, that's a safe area. That's where they're protected. Most people, or nobody sits on the fences. Because if you are going to sit on the fence, then you're going to fall on the other side eventually. So the concept is the same here. If we are going to go onto these boundaries, they are only set there so that a third person, if an issue arises, he can say, you know what, you've actually fallen into the other side, you've actually fallen into haram. This does not mean we go there on the boundary. Okay? Most of the time when there's disputes between a husband and wife, they say, well, but it's my right, and this is my right, and this is my right. How to stop these things? If we stop thinking about what's our right, because these rights are like the fence, are like the boundary. If we think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants me to do ihsan. Ihsan means doing the thing to an excellent manner, in an excellent manner. Doing a favor to the other person even when they don't deserve. Okay? أَلَا وَإِنَّ لِكُلِّ مَلِكٍ حِمَى. Every king has his sanctuary, his sacred place. وَأَلَا وَإِنَّ حِمَى اللَّهِ مَحَارِمُهُ. And this boundary, whatever's beyond the boundary, the sacred area of Allah is the haram things. Where the boundary of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. أَلَا وَإِنَّ فِي الْجَسَدِ مُضْغَةً. That verily there is a piece of flesh in the body, that when this becomes corrected, then the whole body is corrected. Because why? That basically intentions are made through your heart. If your intentions are corrected, then the path of rectification will become easy for you. وَإِذَا فَسَدَتْ فَسَدَ الْجَسَدُ كُلُّهُ. And when this becomes corrupted, when you start having ill intentions or bad intentions, then there's no hope of a good action coming out of that. أَلَا وَهِيَ الْقَلْبِ. That this piece of flesh is the heart. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to act upon this hadith. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the sifa of taqwa. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq to stay away from these doubtful and shubahat. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyil kareem wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.